And good evening. We are doing it live, Yabba Dabba Doo time in Los Angeles, the 5 o'clock hour. Yep, just like Fred Flintstone sliding down that dinosaur. We're doing it right here. Mottek On Money, 5 nights a week, live on the air here on 790 KABC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com, and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast at KBC.com, Apple, iTunes, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Stocks pulling back again today. Cautious trading ahead of the big enchilada, the monthly economic reports, which comes out an hour ahead of the opening bell tomorrow morning. And that's the monthly jobs report from the Labor Department, something the Fed will be paying attention to. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 10 points today. The S&P 500 down 5.5, and the NASDAQ slipped 16. Investors cautious ahead of tomorrow's big jobs report for the month of September, even with a slight pullback in long-term Treasury yields that have been battering stocks. The yield in the 10-year note finish out the day at 4.73%. That's the one that impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates, which are still hovering near 23-year highs. Taking a look at another important report we got this week, a weekly report on jobless claims showing no sign that layoffs have been increasing. Rising layoffs seen as a necessary prerequisite for the Fed to start easing its monetary policy. That is interest rates, short-term interest rates, which have weighed in both stocks and bonds since early 2022 now. The latest report shows unemployment lines did rise slightly, did get longer slightly to 207,000, but remain near pandemic-era lows. Looks like General Motors stock has ended at the lowest seen in 3 years today as the UAW strike continues, and now news saying that the GM might face a massive recall in connection with defective airbag inflators. Elsewhere in the auto space, we see Rivian taking a hit today. Shares of Rivian Automotive, the truck EV maker, tumbling nearly 23% today, its biggest percentage drop on record. And very active trading today following the EV maker's sales outlook and convertible debt offering. The previous record decline on a closing basis for the stock, which went public in 2021, was nearly 21%. That happened last year. Looks like SAG-AFTRA and the producers will continue to talk tomorrow and Monday, according to Variety, as the hot labor summer continues and the actors continuing on the picket lines in front of the major studios. What's happening in Sacramento these days that affects you? Well, today, Governor Newsom signed legislation that expanded workers' paid sick leave, guaranteeing 5 paid sick days per year and increasing the ability to earn and keep them. And the bill to manually hand count ballots in elections with more than 1,000 voters was signed into law by the governor, going into effect immediately. At least one county indicates they plan to sue to block that new law. I'll discuss all that's happening in Sacramento with our Sacramento watchdog and taxpayer advocate extraordinaire, Susan Shelley, columnist for the Southern California News Group and host of the Howard Jarvis radio show, heard Monday nights right here on 790 KABC. Governor Newsom also signed a law to raise the minimum wage for fast food workers to $20 an hour starting next year. When that kicks in on April 1st, fast food workers here in California will have the highest guaranteed base salary in the United States. The state's minimum wage for all other workers is $15.50 an hour, already among the highest in the nation. I'll talk about that and what's happening in the restaurant business with Angela Marsden, owner of the Pineapple Hill Saloon and Grill in Sherman Oaks, small business advocate extraordinaire and host of the SOS Los Angeles show, which airs Saturdays at 1 p.m. on your favorite station right here, 790 KBC. And another reason to stay tuned, later this hour, you'll have a chance to win a relax and rejuvenate getaway to Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Spa. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, inflation, and the whole works tonight. Joining us live now, money manager Ken Winans, president of Winans Investments, market historian, author of Investment Atlas 1 and 2, and Forbes magazine contributor. His latest article came out this week titled Financial Health Examinations, the questions every investor should answer. Ken, thank you very much for coming to the line. Got a big jobs report first thing tomorrow morning, and what's been a rough market week again. Give us your assessment of things here at the moment.
Frank, the weather is hot, but the market is not. What else can be said about that? It's just a wait-and-see attitude as we've been dealing with higher interest rates. And, we're talking about the jobs report tomorrow, but pretty much everybody in my line of work is really looking towards the earnings coming out later this month. And already a lot of companies are giving, as we would call it, guidance to not have our hopes too high. So there's a lot of mixed news coming out. But, you just rattled off several things that just shows I will call it the anti-business policies that still reign even in this very, very tough environment. And that, unfortunately, this is the same type of thing that happened in the 1970s when you have high inflation, the government's trying to help people by raising minimum wage, raising taxes to pay for it, and it just doesn't work. And as we found out with President Reagan, you reverse that and things suddenly take off. But with that being said, I think that the number one thing that I'm finding with a lot of investors, people are just frustrated and tired. We haven't had a new high in the market, although some of the indicators came pretty close earlier this year, but we just haven't had anything hit a new high since late 2021. And, there's just a lot of volatility, a lot of frustration that even good stocks are getting hit. And so with that, that's one of the reasons I wrote that article. It's a good time for people to take a step back, examine their finances, get realistic that a bear market a bull market is not going to help you out of bad financial planning. Now's the time to buckle down and to get serious about how to go forward.
On to your live with money manager Ken Winans. And tell us more about that article, Ken, and what about that financial health examination? And certainly with the big sell-off in bonds this year, a lot of people's portfolios are hurting. What's the cure here?
Well, the number one thing is and I'm talking about it from the advisor. I found that a lot of my clients hadn't really been keeping me up to speed on what was going on in their financial lives, and then suddenly they're in a bit of a panic, whether it's they have kids losing jobs and they're moving home, trying to finish paying for college education, fearing that retirement is not going to go as well as they planned on it. The other big one, and I know we talk about it all the time, is should they leave California and go to the cheaper grounds? And so the idea of this article was to really, and I would encourage everybody to read it, whether or not you're a stock investor, real estate investor, none of that matters. This is for everybody. To take just read the article, put your list together, go talk to your financial people, and come up with a meaningful plan for the next 5 to 10 years that's not fluff and not planning on pie-in-the-sky bull markets in anything, but a more normal situation that you can save into. So it really is for all of us to take a step back and be honest about our financial picture.
All right, what about gas and oil prices? I had to say, give me 100 on pump number 2 earlier on the way in here today. We're seeing regular averaging $6.14 a gallon here in Los Angeles, $6.51 for premium, $6.52 for diesel. Looks like those prices have actually come down by 5 cents, believe it or not, in the last 24 hours or so. Oil has taken a hit this week, now at 82 and change. It was above 90 not too long ago. Ken, the energy stocks have pulled back here in all of this. They, of course, were leading the market higher recently. What about the energy sector now?
Well, in the backdrop of energy, and I often tell everybody, I'm an old commodity trader. I know that when you talk about crude or anything that involves what powers our cars, you also need to talk about natural gas. And we are going into a winter. Many people think it's going to be a cold, wet winter, which means there's going to be a lot of use for natural gas. Prices will go up there. But Frank, it's the same problem that we often have, which is that I know we want to think inflation is going to disappear real soon. We're worried about what the Fed policies are, certainly with interest rates. It's a very tough thing to get out of an economic situation. It's easy to get into. It's too much government spending, but it's awfully hard to get it out of the system. And even Jay Powell admitted that it's probably going to be later in 2025 when the Fed's policy or the Fed's mandates for inflation will be met. So we have to hunker down for a long winter's night as we deal with the inflation thing. But by doing that doesn't mean you cannot make money, but you have to change your tactics on what you did prior to COVID and realize that the games have changed, whether it's real estate. Hey, look at what happened with NFTs. Not all that long ago, everybody was going after those and crypto. Well, NFTs are now effectively worthless. It makes the Dutch tulips look like a bargain. The reality of it is many, many things have changed, and you have that, again, go back, do a reassessment of your finances, figure out how you're going to move forward at this point in your life, and carry on. And that's the best you can do. But energy prices are going to continue to be in flux. Unfortunately, a lot of what you're seeing at the pump are taxes. And I have no reason to believe whatsoever we're going to see energy-related taxes in California come down. Whereas like you talked about that nice time at the Westgate Resort, which, by the way, is wonderful. I've stated it many times. There's a gas station just down the street from that. Gas right now is selling at $4.30 a gallon, and that's right near the Strip. So it's a California problem, not as much as a country problem.
and we're paying $6.14 a gallon on average. A lot of stations still a lot higher. In fact, one station in the area, after we hit that record high last year, has left the last year's prices up. They didn't even bother adjusting it, and $7.99, I believe, is the price for premium there. So watch out for that one. And you made a great point about those NFTs. A lot of celebrities were touting those NFTs in recent years. And what about all that? And what about crypto in all this?
Well, the fact that we're still, that you're continuing to have a lot of the exchanges failing for various reasons. I still believe in blockchain technology, Frank, and I always have. I just happen to think that where I think it's going to really revolutionize things is going to be in real estate. When you look at how long it takes to do any kind of a real estate transaction or to apply for a mortgage today versus every other area of finance, it's still very, very Byzantine. So I think blockchain will work there. But as sadly, people bought into Bitcoin thinking that the dollar was going to go to zero, that fiat currencies were dead, and this was going to protect them. Well, that has not worked out. And in fact, gold has actually held up better when you look at it over the time frame. So you have to, again, reassess that what's new is not always the best. I would suggest this. Before people, double down on, you had a very nice bounce in crypto, but before you decide to think that it's a new bull market, you're going to want to wait and see how everything else plays out, because bull markets in one area and the rest of the markets are not doing anything usually doesn't work out. You want to look for broad-based rallies across the board, so be careful with crypto is the bottom line.
All right, the UAW strike continues, and we see General Motors stock taking another hit today. Rivian, the EV truck maker, we had our expert Lauren Fix on recently, who noted that Rivian loses more than $30,000 per truck, and obviously a lot of pressure happening and a lot of shakeout in the EV business. GM under pressure now because of not only the UAW strike, but a possible big recall. What about the automakers here in the face of all that?
I think the automakers are still going to be facing very, very high labor-related issues that go forward. And it's not just there. Look at what happened with Kaiser, Frank. Massive strikes. When you talk about inflation, you usually have what we call demand pull up first, and then there's what we call wage push. And that is wages trying to help, basically wages having to go up to keep everybody even. We're in that phase right now.
Get an inside look at Hollywood with Michael Rosenbaum, talking with the Phelps brothers.
My gym I go to here is owned by a load of Polish guys. I don't really fit in, a bit leaner, shall we say. And this guy waddles over to me one day and he said, I was back in Poland visiting my family, and my niece said, you're going to have to see this program. All of a sudden I see you and he's at my gym. My niece wouldn't believe me, so I had to have a photo with this guy. His name is literally Tank as well.
Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum, wherever you listen.
And that's going to go on for a while. But I think the automotive companies, whether they're EV companies or they're conventional automotive companies, the simple fact of the matter is cars are getting very expensive to buy. Fewer and fewer people are going to be able to afford them. Fewer and fewer people can afford the financing of them or even qualify. So it is supply and demand. And so in a very strange way, we are back in the 70s when you had those massive strikes in the automotive industry even back then. So we better hunker down and just get ready for this being the new norm.
At this point, Ken Winans, where are you putting money now into or taking off the table?
Well, here's the thing. One thing that I can absolutely tell you, I did a lot of analysis knowing I was coming on the show tonight, and the number one thing, I don't talk much about technical analysis and I don't talk about price movement, but I think if anybody is having stocks that are hitting new lows, they didn't really respond well earlier this year. You certainly should talk to your accountant about from a tax standpoint, but I think you've got to buy the companies that are in uptrends, meaning that they've held up well, they're in demand, which means their businesses are doing well. So it is what I would call a stock picker's market. And so with that being said, some of the names that I came across are probably names you probably haven't really heard of before. A good example would be, if you're looking for a commodity play, go look at Boise Cascade, symbol BCC. The old timber company. They're doing very well. Go look at a company like Decker's Outdoors. Many of you might not know the name, but go take a look at what you're wearing on your feet. You're probably wearing their shoes. Now, you're going to say, what, a shoe company in this environment? Hey, these guys do it better than everybody else. If you're looking for tech stocks, I would encourage you to stay away from the big names. Look at some of the mid-sized names like Cadence Design or Synopsys or Fair Isaac. Go look at some names like that. In financials, I would take a look at anything that is probably in the insurance area. One that I like is A.J. Gallagher. Keep in mind that insurance companies have the ability to raise premiums. Unfortunately, as we've all found out the hard way, you don't have much to really say about it. Your premiums go up, you have to pay it. So there's a lot of elasticity in pricing for insurance companies, still well within the regulatory bounds that each state has set for them. So, Frank, it's a block and tackle kind of market, but here's the good news. October, November, December, January are usually really good months, even in a bear market. So I wouldn't cower away from this thing. Put your list together and be prepared to buy the dips.
On there live with money manager Ken Winans. What about the AI names that propelled the market higher earlier this year, and the so-called Magnificent Seven? What are your thoughts on those tech names here?
You know, it's so funny. You say the Magnificent Seven. Back in the 70s, they had a thing called the Nifty 50. You had to own these stocks. And ironically, they were the ones that got slaughtered the worst when things really did blow up. I would just suggest this. I mean, and again, this is just how I view the world. I don't like celebrity CEOs, and I don't like celebrity companies. I like companies that, I mean, quite frankly, the CEO of any company could walk into a local restaurant and nobody would know who that person is. I love those kind of companies. So with AI, I would just encourage everybody. They moved up to they've been very volatile over the last 18 to 19 months. They took big hits in 2022. They rebounded, and then they pulled back. I think you're going to want to wait and see how the earnings actually look for a lot of these companies before I would step in and buy them. They are, even on these pullbacks, are not cheap. And I don't think AI is going to roll out as fast as everybody thinks it's going to. It takes time for new technologies to become mainstream. So, again, be careful about buying the hype.
And you're a Vegas guy as well as a California guy. Have you been to that new Sphere yet, Ken? It's getting a lot of attention this week.
It's amazing. When you go to Vegas and you look at the skyline, it's amazing what $1 billion can do, and it's not even a building. I haven't actually done the experience yet, but, I mean, when you just anywhere in Vegas, you see this magnificent Sphere with the light show it puts on. I mean, anybody, and by the folks who win your event for the Westgate, they will see it very clearly. It is absolutely gorgeous. But, Frank, there's just another example that Vegas and Nevada overall, they are adapting to this new economic reality. And a lot of the things you talked about tonight that California is proposing, Nevada is not doing any of that, and that's why jobs are going there.
Ken, thank you very much for that thorough assessment. As always, we always appreciate it. That is money manager Ken Winans, president of Winans Investments, market historian, author of Investment Atlas 1 and 2. And check out his latest article in Forbes magazine, which came out this week, titled Financial Health Examinations, the questions every investor should answer. Ken, thank you for taking our questions here this evening. We wish you a wonderful night.
You too, Frank. Good night now.
Thank you very much. Friends, if you're hurt in an accident, you need an experienced advocate. And Clark Fielding and his team of sharks at Fielding Law are on standby, ready to dive into your case. My friend Clark the Shark is fearless for justice and your go-to attorney when injured in an accident that's not your fault. Whether it's a car accident, slip, trip, fall, or any other personal injury, Fielding Law is here to make sure you get the care, attention, and compensation you deserve. Fielding Law can assess the circumstances of the case, negotiate tenaciously with insurance companies, and, if necessary, file a lawsuit and litigate to seek for compensation on behalf of you, the injured party. An injury is a major disruption in your life. Medical expenses, lost wages, pain and suffering, property damage, and other losses incurred as a result of the injury are part of the damages. Don't try and handle this process alone. You need an expert in the process. The team at Fielding Law are the ones to trust. Put Clark Fielding's number in your phone right now under the word accident. That number is 833-88-SHARK, 833-88-SHARK, or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. Thank you, Chairman of the Board. All this week, KBC has your chance to win a relax and rejuvenate getaway to Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Spa, which includes a 2-night stay at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino, dinner at Edge Steakhouse and spa credit at Serenity Spa. Right now, be caller 9 at 1-888-790-5222, 1-888-790-5222 to win a relax and rejuvenate getaway to Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Spa, home of the legendary Vegas Fund. Must be at least 21 to win. Prizes provided by Westgate Las Vegas. Mottek On Money continues now on 790 KBC. The Dow pulling back a bit today ahead of the big jobs report out first thing tomorrow morning. We were down 10 points for the Dow, ending at 33,100. 119. The S&P 500 down 5.5 at 4,258. And the NASDAQ slipped 16 points at 13,219. Investors turning cautious today ahead of the jobs report tomorrow. And we'll have that report an hour ahead of the opening bell tomorrow morning. That is the big enchilada, the monthly economic reports, the jobs report from the Labor Department. We did see bond yields pull back a bit. The benchmark yield on the 10-year note now 4.73%. The price of oil moving higher, up 53 cents at $82.84 a barrel. Gas prices pulling back about 5 cents a gallon overnight here in the Los Angeles area. Finally, some relief at the pump. Regular averaging $6.14 a gallon. In the L.A. Long Beach area, $6.51. The average price for premium pays to pay attention to those price signs out there. A lot of stations a lot higher than those average prices. Diesel now averaging $6.52 a gallon in the L.A. Long Beach area. We see General Motors stock ending at the lowest seen in 3 years today, following a report that the car maker may face a massive recall in connection with defective airbag inflators. According to the Wall Street Journal, at least 20 million GM vehicles are built with a potentially dangerous airbag part made by auto supplier ARC Automotive of Tennessee. GM stock down nearly 2.5% at $30.31 a share, its lowest seen since September 30th, 2020, when it closed at $29 and change. Looks like GM has made a new counteroffer as the UAW strike continues. GM said it's made a counteroffer to the United Auto Workers in a bid to end the strike by the union against the automaker, as well as the two other big three automakers in Detroit. Shares of Rivian Automotive, the EV truck maker, plunging nearly 23% after the company said it plans to offer $1.5 billion worth of green convertible senior notes due in 2030, and issued a preliminary sales estimate that met Wall Street expectations. And VinFast, that's the Vietnamese auto company with its headquarters, USA headquarters here in Los Angeles, gaining about 5.5% today after the EV maker reported third-quarter revenue that more than doubled from a year ago. Shares still remain well under the $22 IPO price. Mottek On Money continues now on 790 KABC, getting some new information about an unusual military incident involving two NATO allies, the United States and Turkey. The Pentagon says our military, shot down an armed Turkish drone that came within 500 yards of American troops in northeastern Syria in a rare use of force by one NATO member against another. The Air Force Brigadier General, who's the Pentagon press secretary, General Patrick Ryder, called it a regrettable incident and said U.S. troops were forced to go to bunkers for safety as Turkey bombed targets nearby. A U.S. F-16 fighter jet shot down an armed Turkish drone that was operating near American troops in Syria after several warnings, according to the Pentagon. Very unusual situation. The decision to shoot down an ally's armed drone was made out of due diligence and the inherent right of self-defense to take appropriate action to protect U.S. forces, according to General Ryder, who added that we have no indication that Turkey was intentionally targeting U.S. forces. Very unusual situation. I'm sure we'll hear more about that this evening and first thing in the morning. What's happening in Sacramento these days that affects you? Well, today, Governor Newsom signed legislation that expanded workers' paid sick leave, guaranteeing 5 paid sick days per year and increasing the ability to earn and keep them, and a bill to end the manual hand count of ballots in elections with more than 1,000 voters. Signed into law by Governor Newsom, going into effect immediately. At least one county indicates they plan to sue to block that law. Let's bring in our Sacramento watchdog and taxpayer advocate extraordinaire, Susan Shelley, with us now, columnist for the Southern California News Group and host of the Howard Jarvis radio show, heard right here Monday nights on 790 KABC. Susan, thank you very much for taking the call. Tell us what we need to know about what's happening there in Sacramento.
Well, the law that is going to ban the manual counting of ballots is really very concerning. It seems that Shasta County has 9,500 registered voters who are about to vote in a special election on November 7th of this year. And they wanted to count by hand. They canceled their contract with Dominion Voting Systems in January, and they said they wanted to count by hand, which they certainly can do. 9,500 voters is not overwhelming. Well, the state of California will not have it. And this law, which takes effect immediately on an urgency basis, makes it illegal to do a hand count of ballots in the state of California, because apparently the League of Women Voters makes the argument that this will be costly and destabilizing, and that this only feeds the irrational passions of uninformed political actors. Well, if you want to increase confidence in our elections. The one thing you don't want to do is ban the hand counting of ballots. That's just counterproductive and very suspicious.
Very interesting. And here, another example of where the state moves in to kind of interfere with the intentions of a county, right?
You're exactly right. And the county is not having it. They say that they're going to go ahead with their hand count and the state can sue them. And they're also saying that they may sue the state. So this is probably not the last we'll hear of this. But the League of Women Voters is very concerned not so much about Shasta County, but that this idea of election integrity and hand counting ballots to check the machine counts might catch on. And other counties might try to do it. And, once again, the way to increase election confidence is to open up more verification, not less. And if you try to prevent verification, it only increases suspicion. We were promised paper ballots when our now Senator Padilla was Secretary of State, and he changed over all the systems in all the counties. He decertified all the old equipment and said everyone had to buy these machines from one of these approved vendors. When he did that, he promised us that we would have paper ballots. He never said we wouldn't be able to see them or count them. So this is really bait and switch. And
very, very concerning. It's interesting. This is happening today. I drove by one of those boxes, those voting boxes out there, and I was thinking to myself, what if somebody puts stuff in there now? What happens? It's certainly a lot of concern about the integrity of the elections, and now this.
We're all juggling life, a career, and trying to build a little bit of wealth. The Brown Ambition podcast with host Mandy and Tiffany the Budgetnista can help.
If I do even consider lending, I always ask myself, will this solve the problem? So I know you don't have your money for mortgage because you don't have a job. So what happens next month? Oh, I don't know. I'm going to have to think about the next month. Now, it's another thing if you're like, hey, Tiffany, I have $1,000 left to pay my car and then I'm car note free and I'll be able to pay you back, the 3 months I used to pay my car note. That solves the problem.
Brown Ambition.
Wherever you listen.
Well, we're mailing out ballots to all registered voters, supposedly all active registered voters. But the voter rolls were never intended for that. They're not maintained with the precision that enables mass mailing of ballots based on the voter rolls. It used to be that you would go to the precinct and you would sign in, and if you were on the voter rolls, you could vote. It didn't matter if there were people who were on the voter rolls who weren't going to show up because they had moved or whatever, because they weren't going to get a ballot. But now they do get a ballot. And we have 22 million ballots in California, and this is like American currency. This is money because every election has tax increases and bond measures, and we're electing the people who are going to make decisions about spending our money. This is very important that there's some level of election security, and people should have confidence that the elections are real. And then they go and do this, and they ban the hand counting of ballots to verify that the machines are accurate. There's no question that the machines can have problems. I'm not saying they do, but they can. It's technically possible. This is why the Secretary of State does certification procedures on every system. And here in LA County, the first time they certified this equipment in 2020, they said that they would have to put safety tape over the USB ports in the servers to make sure that no one put in a thumb drive with malicious content. Now, really, if you need tape over the USB ports, don't people have a right to ask whether these are secure?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you're highlighting this. I don't know any other place where people are hearing this kind of information. We're on the air live with Susan Shelley, columnist for the Southern California News Group and host of the Howard Jarvis radio show, heard Monday nights here on 790 KABC. I remember the olden days when we had election results on election night, right, especially on a mayoral race, and come to find out in this last go-around was what it took about a week or two or three to get the final results. Aren't these computers supposed to help us get the results quicker?
Well, they would if we didn't have laws that allow ballots to be delivered and counted 7 days after Election Day. They will still accept ballots, supposedly that were postmarked by Election Day, but the postmark is not required. So they can just be delivered by some sort of certification that says they were. But really, it's just a terrible vulnerability, and it does not lead to confidence in the elections.
What's going to be done about it?
Probably nothing. There's a lawsuit that's pending over the registrar's action in LA County regarding the George Gascon recall and how they chose to disqualify signatures that were actually valid. And if that goes forward, that could force a cleanup of the voter rolls and some of the other procedures, because we have to have confidence in our elections. If we don't, we've lost everything.
Susan, thank you very much for highlighting this. As always, I wish we had more time, but obviously this is a very, very important issue, and we do appreciate all you do as a Sacramento watchdog and taxpayer advocate for all of us here, Republican and Democrat, I might add. We're all taxpayers and paying a fortune here in California. Susan Shelley, columnist for the Southern California News Group and host of the Howard Jarvis Radio Show, heard Monday nights here on 790 KABC. Thanks again, Susan, for joining us live here tonight.
Thank you, Frank.
Friends, the future of joint pain is here. It's called QC Kinetics, Advanced Regenerative Medicine. This is amazing. It's Frank Mottek here. Now, you've been told more steroids and surgery are your only options. Don't be so fast. Get a second opinion on that and learn more about how you can harness your body's own healing agents to attack that joint pain. I'm talking lasting relief. QC Kinetics doesn't mask the pain. These treatments go right to the very root of the problem, using concentrated healing properties placed directly in your joint to restore and repair that damaged joint tissue. Imagine living your life this fall with no more pain in your knees, hips, shoulders, or back. No drugs, no surgery, and no downtime. Life's about motion, and QC Kinetics is giving people their lives back with these all-natural treatments. Call QC Kinetics for a free consultation, the nation's leader in regenerative medicine. QC Kinetics, locations in Glendale, the city of Orange, Mission Viejo, now also in Costa Mesa, 213-997-PAIN. Call now, 213-997-PAIN. Again, that's 213-997-PAIN. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good evening. I want to say Pete Arbacast is absolutely the best on those USC games. Pete, love your broadcast, and we'll be listening for you. Governor Newsom has signed a law to raise the minimum wage for fast food workers to $20 an hour next year. When that kicks in on April 1st, fast food workers in California will have the highest guaranteed base salary in the United States. The state's minimum wage for all other workers, by the way, is $15.50 an hour, already among the highest in the nation. Let's bring in someone who tells it like it is, and I'm sure that'll be the case tonight again. Angela Marsden is with us now, owner of the Pineapple Hill Saloon and Grill in Sherman Oaks, small business hero, small business advocate, and part of the family here, host of SOS Los Angeles, which airs Saturdays at 1 p.m. on your favorite station, 790 KABC. Angela, thrilled to speak with you again. Go ahead and lay it on thick and give us your reaction to the latest news out of Sacramento and what's happening here at your place.
You know what? I want to put it out there on in the front when you say let's pay somebody $20 an hour because it's expensive, inflation went up. I'm for that as well. But the problem is we have people like Gavin Newsom and people in our city that are not business people running the city, and they shuck their responsibility as politicians. They should be getting the inflation down. They should be creating more jobs, but instead they continue to not know what they're doing. They increase inflation. They don't have good jobs. We're taking in all the world's homeless, and we're taking in people from other countries, which, by the way, I'm for that. I think there should be a work program between Mexico and us. That should be resolved. But at the end of the day, you cannot keep just taking from the businesses. I want you to know this. I've been doing a little bit of research because I wanted to think about this thoughtfully and not just go off like I normally do, because this will not just affect how many jobs we have in California, but it also will affect and have a ripple effect for small mom and pop driven restaurants. Okay. The median income for low income, the threshold just increased to $70,650. One person making $70,650 in Los Angeles is now considered low income. One person. If you go to PayScale does research on what mom and pop owner-operators make. On average, they make anywhere from $61,000. The median is about $79,000. A mom and pop restaurant is making the owner is making around $79,000 if they're lucky after COVID, carrying back rent, and now a $20 an hour McDonald's employee, right? I have cooks. They have to cook. They have to know their job, which, by the way, I do pay them more than $20 an hour. But I also am not making very much money. But I care about my employees, and I knew and I seen this coming. And what happens is the franchisees, Fortune had an article, 14,000 franchise owners may be forced to leave California because those franchisees owners are mom and pop owners. They are doing a franchise from the bigger franchisee. They're not making the money that people think they're making. And then it all gets passed on to the consumer. For example, I just raised my prices. I have my bartenders saying, some people are complaining about the prices. I went through Carl's Jr. and their $5 chicken strips cost as much as mine did after I just raised them at Carl's Jr. So threefold. Here's what happens. You get people in, they don't know how to run the state, they don't know how to run the county, LA County. They make all these decisions based on feelings and not on knowledge. We need business people in there that are not trying to rob us blind. I mean, how many of our city council are going down from trying to rob us blind? I mean, then they pass it on to the business owners. I'm sorry, like they think there's just money on trees. And what happens? Well, McDonald's starts putting all automated restaurants in California. And franchisees owners who really take care of the franchise and love it have to leave because they can't make enough money. Meanwhile, mom and pop shops, they now have to pay $24 to $25 an hour for a cook in a Cheers pub because that person actually has to cook. And that means your hamburger is now $35 or $30 and not at a very, very nice restaurant. And do you know who's not feeling it? The rich people, the upper 20%. They're not feeling it because they don't mind paying $30 for a hamburger. But who is feeling it is the dwindling 50%, the middle class. By the way, the median income, so 70,000 is poverty level now, right, on one person. The median income is $68,750. That's the median income in LA County. Now, that person now has to work a second job, a third job, just so they can afford a martini at a bar. I mean, they are not – first of all, small businesses need to be their own class. We need to have a tip exception law, meaning that whatever the $25 an hour, whatever it is, the tip is in it. And if the owner, if the employee does not make the minimum wage, the owner has to tip it in. So that way we can get the prices down for the consumer and we can get more business in. And believe me, my service, my staff is great. They'll make really good money. But just sticking it to the businesses because you don't have a creative mind and you're chasing out the bigger businesses, by the way, all the big businesses that pay the majority of the taxes, they've ran out. So now what are they doing? They're trying to make up the income by forcing employers to pay something that they may not necessarily be able to afford. And I said this before, but I love how the Board of Supervisors, Frank, who was the Board of Supervisors who was pushing for $30 an hour minimum wage? Do you remember who that is? That was just recently, right?
Yep. Yeah, I don't remember the name now, but we get those kind of proposals from time to time. You're absolutely right.
Right. They're trying to push $30 an hour. And guess what? When they were pushed to pay $25 an hour for their city employees, they said it just wasn't in the budget. Have they ever asked or went and done a study of what the budget is of franchisees owners and restaurant mom and pop owners? They have not. They continue to make very big mistakes that put us in this situation in LA. It hurts every one of us. I don't care race, demographic, anybody that is middle class, lower income. It's only getting worse for us. And it's because they think money grows on trees from everybody else.
Yep. Angela, thank you very much for laying it on thick as always. Amen to what you said, and I hope people heard you loud and clear. And we'll be listening for you this Saturday at 1 p.m. on your show right here, and that is SOS Los Angeles. That is Angela Marsden, the owner of the Pineapple Hills Saloon and Grill in Sherman Oaks and host of SOS Los Angeles, airing Saturdays at 1 p.m. right here on 790 KBC. Stay tuned for Royal Oaks on the 790 KBC News Blitz. This is Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
You loved Lala Kent on Vanderpump Rules. Now get to know her on Give Them Lala.
When you get married, I'm letting you know, no one gives but you. And when you get remarried, then people really don't accept you. No one needs to hear your backstory and speeches given. It's so boring. Have a cap, like no longer than a minute. No one cares about your love story. I know it's hard to hear.
Watch what Lala is talking about on YouTube or search for Give Them Lala wherever you listen.